Well, hello. It's time to talk about RPG a Day 2022 once again. Unlike yesterday, which was the first day, I won't be doing a singular topic today. It's just not going to be possible for me this year for RPG a Day 2022, but I do want to be involved. And somehow, as we go through the month of August, I'll be hitting up all the different platforms that I use for sharing, my ideas about role-playing games. So some of my releases are going to come out on the podcast first. Some of my releases are going to come out on the written blog first. And some of my releases are going to come out on YouTube first. The content will be similar. Sometimes it will be a version of the same. And as we go through the month, I'm hoping I'll be able to share everything everywhere so it can be found wherever it is that you prefer to interact with it. But we'll see what life allows. But yesterday was a special day. It was the first day. So I focused on just the one question, which is who would you like to introduce to RPGs? But this year, the flow of the questions have been prepared so that you can, take them in week-sized chunks. So in this outing, I'll be looking at day 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to save day 7 for its own video or its own post, its own recording or whatever. So let's get into it. Yesterday was who would you like to introduce to RPGs? I picked a singular person, an actual individual that I would like to have introduced to role-playing games. But some people out there, maybe people who are more outgoing than I am, have introduced everybody in their circles. And so they came up with the good idea of introducing it to, a group of people, a type of people, or people in a specific situation, like a library program or an after-school program, or reaching out to the elderly. And I think these are fantastic ideas. I know in my own life that time I have spent interacting with people far older than myself has always been a valuable and enriching experience. And I hope that my interaction with them was as important as their interactions with me, and getting together to game and draw on their life experiences for shared imaginings just sounds fantastic for me. I'm already involved in a sort of after school program sort of thing. So gaming with people who've never played before is not new to me. It's very rewarding to be part of the way that they discover it, and gaming with younger players is also pretty exciting too, especially at how innovative they can be when you least expect it. And I don't just mean about what they decide to do with their characters, but coming up with systems and their own rules and things. It's fascinating. But we've talked about that specifically in an earlier RPG a day, so we won't talk about it further now. So let's get to the next question. All these questions are linked. They have this week-long theme. So what is a great introductory RPG? Keeping that first answer in mind, but not necessarily being bound to it. What is a great introductory RPG? One that I think, in a general sense, is a strong contender for a good beginner game that is still very satisfying for experienced players, and that's not always an easy mix to find, is Broken Compass. With its fast pace, with its kind of familiar uh, mechanisms of play, and it's straightforward system. We can take a pre-generated character, or we can make a character easily. That character sheet has everything that we need to know as a player, and the system, well, pretty much everything you need to know as the game master is on the screen. So in terms of resources, it has a very minimal impact. The game itself is visually inspiring, it's fun to read, and it's not a dry game book read at all, where you already have an established love of the hobby, and so it's very easy to get through and learn how to play this particular game. That's a skill that we develop over time as we become role-playing gamers. But as an introductory experience, sometimes the text itself can be quite off-putting. So Broken Compass is one of those games that talks to you and works with you to gain understanding and excitement and ground you in whatever you're playing. Plus, it has support for a wide variety of eras, full support. It's got story seeds, it's got longer form play hooks or adventures. It has pre-generated characters. It has cheat sheets and all of these things to make getting into the game pretty easy. So as a general experience, I would say that Broken Compass is a pretty strong contender for one of the many games that you can go to as a good or great introductory experience. In the specific case that I mentioned yesterday, that fellow liked systems and he liked metal and he liked things which, were exciting and over the top, but he really did have an eye for how things kind of fit together. He's good with his hands, good with making things, and so at that time we were playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in its only edition at that time. Second edition was not yet out, but that's the game I would have introduced him to. I wonder if it would have been the best introductory experience. Maybe he would have been more open to something like RuneQuest had I known about it, had we been playing it then, or Stormbringer. The more I think about it, the more I think that Stormbringer would have been a pretty fabulous way to introduce him to role playing. It has the metal aspects, and there's actual metal music that we could have listened to, and hard rock and music, psychedelic rock, inspired by the world of Elric of Melniboné. So that's probably the one I would have, should have, could have chosen had things gone differently in a variety of different ways. But all right, that's great introductory RPG. That's day 2. Day 3. When were you first introduced to RPGs? Well, I was introduced to RPGs in 1983. I was not introduced to the famous Frank Metzer version of the red box, the third stab at basic D&D. But it wasn't long before that was a part of our play. And I was introduced by a friend at school. That friend had older brothers who were wargamers and who played a variety of things. They were early adopters of role-playing games. And while I personally never got to play with them, I did get to benefit from, repeated conversations from my friend based on his experiences playing with them. But there was a huge age gap between my friend and his brothers, really big age gap. And so, I think he had a less than wonderful time playing with his older brothers because he was the youngest brother, and they were definitely not kids anymore. So playing with me and people our own age was his outlet. But he was a great proponent of play. He made it really easy to learn, and I'm very thankful that he passed on the notion to me that playing a role-playing game doesn't mean that there's this separation between player and game master. And so as a player of the role-playing game, you needed to know all the rules. And so he gave me my very first role-playing game book, and very quickly had me running the game as well as playing it. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. All right. Where would you host a first game? Well, in the context of my first day's answer, this was in the height of the Satanic Panic. And so uh, I would not have been able to host that first game at home. Where I was most frequently playing in these particular days was actually at a Canadian historical heritage sites called Fort Beauséjour. And you can look that up online. It's a pretty interesting place. And I used to ride out there. It was actually across the border in a different province. I'm from Canada, so crossing the border across from Nova Scotia into New Brunswick, and it's right. This fort, this ancient, this old fort is right on the border, and so it's an easy ride out there, and didn't really matter what the weather was, and we could actually game in a place that felt like a cavern, or on a nice day sitting out on the grass and stuff. And so looking out over mostly unspoiled landscape. And so looking in one direction, you could see signs of civilization. But the town I lived in those days, called Amherst, Nova Scotia, um, is on the world's largest saltwater marsh. So there's a whole lot of actual nothing around the town. So you could easily lose yourself in a fantasy world there. So maybe in that context, uh, that's where we would have gone for the first game to help have an immersive experience. But in a general sense, what I like is for the space to be quite comfortable. One large table that we can all sit around with a central focus. I like to roll dice in the open. I like people to be able to see what other people are rolling, what I'm rolling. And so if any rules questions come up, they can be easily answered. Or if a result doesn't make sense in the moment, we can all see it and we can quickly address it and keep the momentum going. So there are lots of places here where you can rent a meeting room, right? Has all kinds of AV equipment, has access to refreshments. The rooms are soundproofed and the chairs are comfortable, that kind of thing. So if I were introducing a bunch of new people to a game such as Broken Compass, then I'd want to have access to large scale AV, like a big display panel, um, for some kind of introduction, or be able to flash up rules references quickly, or the great character art that goes along with the pre-generated characters if we were using those. So there's a lot of value that can be gained from one of these cheap meeting room rentals for a first game, so that we don't have to worry about uh, being guests in someone's home, maybe for the first time. We don't have to worry about um, comfort, or does everybody, can everybody hear everybody else? Can everybody see everything? All that stuff is just automatically taken care of for a very low hourly rental fee. And so that's where I would host a first game. 5, why will they like the game? Well, I've already hit this up when I talked about choosing Stormbringer, but the matching the theme of a game, the genre of a game, the complexity, or the processing requirements of a game, I think matching that to the people that you're going to be introducing it to is an essential part of the process. So predicting while they will, what they will like about the game, I think is a part of preparing to invite them and preparing a pitch for them. If we were talking about Broken Compass, why would they like it? It's fast, it's unpredictable, it has different types of choices, and it has a strong connection to movies and fiction, but particularly movies. So when we talk about cinematic games, we're talking about presenting things in a visual style. We're talking about presenting things with a flow from one type of scene to another type of scene. We're talking about playing with tropes, and literally playing with tropes, not just referencing them and reproducing them whole cloth, but making them our own, redefining the trope in our own experience, sort of thing. So by making the pitch to do Broken Compass, maybe Jolly Roger, a pirate game, or using one of the what if scenarios to make a kind of Star Wars or Star Trek experience could be a very easy way in. High adventure, high action, very easy to connect to existing experiences of fiction and cinema in our memories, and the mechanics that are easy enough to just roll with mechanisms involved in play that as we get more comfortable, we can do greater and greater things. And so as our familiarity with the system grows through the session, then the hijinks and the actions and the daring that we can reach for expands as well. And so I think that's why people would really respond to being introduced to Broken Compass. Being introduced to Stormbringer, well, it's Stormbringer. If you haven't had that pleasure, then leap in. The water's fine. And the last question for this particular recording: how would you get more people playing role-playing games? This is a difficult question. It seems like we're talking about evangelizing and pushing the boundaries, but really, when I put the question together, what I was thinking about, you've introduced one person to role-playing games. How would you get more? And that's where things like talk with the players rears its head again. Right? How do we connect with more people? How do we expand our circle? You've moved to a new area. You don't know anybody. You don't know anybody who games. The people that you know in that new place don't game, right? So we can start small and we can slowly expand, inviting people in that we identify might enjoy the experience, that we can identify that we might be able to have a good relationship with. I definitely have a strong feeling about gaming, that gaming exists at your table. It's your group that really is your experience of gaming. It's not really what's happening at some convention somewhere, or it's not really the experience of random games with strangers. That does let us experience the games, but if it doesn't go somewhere, if it doesn't become a game group, if it doesn't become a circle of acquaintances that deepens into a circle of friends, then I'm not as satisfied. So carefully building connections, playing the game, having fun with the game, and then reaching that point where we want to share it and finding someone to share it with is the way that I would get more people involved. But on the larger scale, on the hobby-wide scale, there's now is a great time to capitalize on the greater awareness of games and to offer people the opportunity. The thing is that people who haven't played before have no idea what it's possible to play or the different ways to play. And if we don't know them very well, it's difficult to make a suggestion. So what I think is the approach that works best for me is to approach the notion of being introduced to gaming as a primary goal, so that we're not going to get together and launch a campaign of something. We're going to get together and we're going to survey a number of games. We might discover that we got a lot of Star Trek fans in the group, so we're going to start out playing Star Trek Adventures, and we like science fiction, so we're also going to try Traveler, which is a famous science fiction role-playing game. And as we play those two games, we might learn more things about what people like. We also have Star Wars fans, so we'll get a Star Wars role-playing game to the table. And we have people who really like mysteries. They preferred solving mysteries in Star Trek to shooting stormtroopers in Star Wars. So let's try some kind of investigation game. We'll bring one of those out, and we'll mix and match between games that are more involved on the mechanical level and games that are less involved, and we'll find out what it is that we like to play. We'll work our way toward the games that we want to play long term. If indeed we want to play long term, we may be a group that is more aligned to playing one shots and short run campaigns and using pre-gens and using published adventures. Who knows? And we won't know until we meet those people and actually conduct the introduction. So there we have it. That finishes off the first week of RPG a Day 2022. I'm not sure where you'll come across this information, whether it will be on my podcast, whether it will be on YouTube, or whether it will be on the written blog, but you can find the links to all of those in the description that attends this posting, wherever it is that you find it first. Until the next time, take care. And please enjoy your gaming, please enjoy life, and please enjoy RPG a Day 2022. You can enjoy it by participating yourself. You can get the infographic at autocratic.com. Download it. The questions are there. The instructions are there. Just go and run with it. But also, when you find an RPG a Day 2022 post that tickles your fancy, that you like, that makes you think, that is not what you expected, that kind of stuff, share it. Expand its reach out there, so that when people come with questions about role-playing games and they start searching for RPG or TTRPG, or they start searching for the names of particular games, positive posts are out there to be found. Anyway, until next time, take care.